Hi folks, this is my first ever YouTube video, so you have to be nice to me. This is basically an extended info dump session on Persona, which has been my special interest for about 3 years now, because I have bad taste, and I should feel bad about it, but instead I'm making you look at this. I'm sorry, but also not sorry enough to stop. So in order to make it so that this 100 plus slideshow isn't actually just a horrendous torture experience, I'm splitting it up into 4 different videos. I didn't predict when I started making this that it would be as long as it is. I'm really sorry, but again, also not sorry enough to stop. So you'll just have to put up with that. So the first section of the presentation that I'm going to make is a basic introduction to what Persona is, and why I constantly say that I have bad taste, and why I'm correct. Basically, what we have here is a really old series of games, actually, that it's like a spin-off of a spin-off. The original series of games is the Shin Megami Tensei series, which has been going since forever, and allegedly is still going on. Press F to anybody still waiting on Shin Megami Tensei 5. I'm so sorry. I legitimately hope that you get some sort of news out of Atlus in, like, the next 5 years, because this is getting ridiculous now, and I don't even want the game. There was a spin-off made around the sort of PlayStation 2 era called Shin Megami Tensei Persona, and it introduced the sort of format of using personas in an RPG context, with high schoolers and the general sort of setting, I guess, originated back then, but there were also a lot of differences between that and modern Persona games, mostly around the actual gameplay. The original Persona games, Persona and Persona 2, both of them, much more classic JRPG grinding kind of gameplay, which is really great if that's what you're into, legitimately. I would recommend those games if you like classic JRPGs. If you're a scrub like me, who doesn't know how to play video games and just looks everything up online, then modern Persona is for you in a gameplay context. I wouldn't say they're easy, they can be quite involved and complicated, especially when you look at the social link system, but in general, they're more modern and much, I'm going to go ahead and say, easier to play, just because if you don't spend 5 hours grinding, you may not die. May being the operative word here. The modern Persona games, 3, 4, and 5, are all set in the same universe. Most of this presentation is going to be based on the story side of things, and not the gameplay, because I don't actually own a PlayStation. That's a lie, I own a PlayStation, but I mean like a PlayStation, like before PS1 was a thing. So understandably, I can't play these PlayStation 2 and onwards games. I read about them online and buy ridiculous amounts of merchandise. Anyway, so, oh, no, wait, I forgot. There's like 12 billion spin-offs. So all of them have a story, even if they're not part of the story. And also most of them have adaptations, either in the format of an anime or a manga or both, or more than one manga, because they got one with one mangaka and then they decided, actually, we really like this other guy too, so we're going to let him do some as well. Yeah, and also some of the spin-offs have mangas, because Atlus has no self-control, and also these are some of the best mangas for the series, which is really awkward when you're trying to get your friends into it, because you're like, yeah, this is the best part, but you can't look at it yet. It's not quite Kingdom Hearts level of that, but I mean, yeah, it keeps going. There's like so many spin-offs, and it's really hard when your friend's like, oh, what's that thing you're super into? I think I saw it in the video game store, and you're like, no, that's the spin-off of the spin-off that's not canon, and there's a canon version of it, but it's only in the manga format, and you just end up sounding like a mega nerd even just trying to get them in through the door. Don't worry about it. Just don't think about it. Just don't. TLDR. There are a lot of pieces of media to get through if you want to try and involve yourself with everything. You really don't have to in order to appreciate or understand the series. It's perfectly acceptable to just pick one that looks interesting to you, pick it up, engage with it, put it down again, and never look at any of the others. They all work as standalone pieces of media. If you look on the slide, you can see I picked out specific titles of games and manga and anime to get you started. These are the base games that basically explain what's going on and who the characters are. It is worth mentioning the Persona 5 Royal Edition, which is an updated version with more story added, is coming out very soon. It's looking to be very good. I would highly recommend it. There's been this nonsense online about how it's been censored. It hasn't. One scene has been adapted to look less rapey. So I would still recommend the game. I would still look into it if you're at all interested in the characters or the setting as presented in the fourth part of my presentation. All of the games that are here are games that I enjoy. So if you're my friends and you're wondering which one of these I'm talking about when I'm talking about Persona, the answer is all of them, and I'm really sorry. If you engage with one of them and you want a recommendation on what spin-off media to go for next, or what comic to read, or what sort of other games that are similar to go for, I can make recommendations, so feel free to leave comments or hit me up on social media and I will try and be as helpful as I can. So yeah, in my first slide, I called Katsura Hashino a coward. And I stand by that statement. He can come at me on Twitter if he wishes. I would be more than happy to speak with him in a genuinely non-combative way. Unfortunately, though, I don't speak Japanese, so I don't think that's going to happen. Also, he's not on the team for Persona 6, so his sort of involvement has more or less ended with the Persona series. Some people are hopeful that this means we'll see a return of the Persona series to the kind of tone that it took in Persona 2, with LGBT plus characters and with social commentary. I wouldn't say that my hopes are high, just because, well, let's just say he's not the only person on the team. And I feel like, especially with Persona 4 being more mainstream than Persona 3, and Persona 5 being more mainstream than Persona 4, I feel like they're very much moving towards trying to appeal to what their shareholders consider to be a mainstream audience, which means that they are not going to be making brave social commentary. They're very much going to be towing the status quo line as much as they can. I think it's cowardly. I think that, especially with the financial backing from Sega, they could be doing some really cool story stuff with these themes, but they're just probably going to continue doing what they've been doing. These games, I can't recommend them on a social progressiveness front at all. They are fairly middle of the line, what I'm going to call anime trash. Anime isn't trash. Not all trash is anime. But anime trash is what these games can be. The humor is very juvenile, and can be pretty misogynistic. Their idea of fan service is very sort of 1990s, early 2000s, look, here's a cute girl in a bikini. A lot of the this is my real beef, a lot of the characters get undermined by the level of just inconsiderate humour, in that you'll have a character who's set up to be very kind and thoughtful, and then suddenly they're making off-colour jokes that just don't seem right for the character, and that contradict the main themes of the story, and it just reduces the overall cohesiveness of what the games seem like they're trying to say versus what actually comes out. That's my big beef with the series and my big kind of disclaimer. If you are looking for social progressiveness, this is not where you will find it. Not even in Persona 5, where the whole story is that it's a group of vigilante social justice warriors. That's literally the gimmick of the game. And we still have shite like the screenshot there with the blonde boy and the blonde girl, where he's ogling her breasts. Thanks for that one, Ketsura Hashino, because it's pretty run-of-the-mill humour for him. Yes. So, I'm really sorry I have bad taste. Please be nice to me, because otherwise I will cry. You don't have to like what I like, but just don't, attack me on social media, because I will just block you. It's not worth it. So, the main issue you have when you're looking up characters in Persona games, most of the characters have static names, but the protagonists do not, because in the game itself you get to choose the protagonist's name. You can make it whatever you want, and people have got funny names that they've picked for their protagonists, and you don't have to make it be a name. It can be a meme, it can be something that's funny when it's put into dialogue. But obviously when you have a manga or an anime, you can't just put protagonist everywhere that somebody calls the character by name, so they tend to choose names. There's a grid on the screen where you can see the different names in the different settings. Yeah, there are stage plays and drama CDs. Don't worry about them. Most of the drama CDs just avoid referring to the characters by name at all. And the reason that I left the stage play name for the Persona 5 protagonist blank is because he actually has 7 stage play names. They did a different one for each performance, and I didn't have space on the slide to add them all. Also, I could only find half of them online. So I need to kind of wait for that to filter through to the wiki and everything before I can add it to the slide. There will be a link in the description as to the base presentation that this was based on, so that you can read it back at your own pace. And if, for example, when Persona 5 Royal comes out, or if I do find the stage play names for the Persona 5 protagonist, I will update the base presentation, but I probably won't update this video. So I guess if you're interested, keep an eye on my social media, and I'll probably post if I update it. Sorry that I'm so disorganized, but it's not actually my fault. Anyway, I also needed to pick some protagonist names for this presentation. So I've gone ahead and picked my favorite ones. I'm using mostly the manga names because even though the game and anime names are considered to be the most canon, they can also be quite confusing, specifically because the Persona 3 protagonist's name, bits of it sound the same as names from Persona 5 characters, so it was just easier to go with the manga names, because at least they're distinctive. So, I opened this presentation by saying that I would explain what Persona is, and I haven't actually talked about personas at all. So I just wanted to slip this in to try and make it clear that this is a story-based presentation, and I am actually going to talk about the story as well as shilling the games and the spin-offs, I promise. A persona is a stand. If you know JoJo, it's the same concept. it's a manifestation of your willpower and sort of the face that you use to face hardships, I think is a way that it's described. But basically, they're big, goofy magic things that you summon to fight monsters for you. So, most people have one, and the design is usually inspired by a myth or legend that corresponds to their storyline in some fashion. So, for example, the Persona 3 protagonist is quite heavily associated. Their storyline is quite heavily associated with death and sort of the afterlife and what the point of it all is. So their protagonist is named after Orpheus and has a big harp and everything. The Persona 5 protagonist, they've got the whole Phantom Thief thing going on. Almost all of the Persona 5 personas are based on thieves or outlaws. So the protagonist is based on Arsène Lupin. So that's fun. In Persona 3 in particular, it seems when you play the game sort of backwards, 5, 4, 3, which is quite a common way of doing it, that the Persona 3 persona system is different because the characters don't talk about them the same way that the characters in the other games do. This is not a mistake, it's not a difference in the setting, it's a plot point. Because Persona 3 is chronologically in universe before the other games, they haven't discovered a lot of things about Persona yet. So, they make what we would term mistakes, but actually they're more like, being misled, or misunderstanding things, in a way that when you look back, you're like, oh, yeah, of course they would think that. The protagonists are special. They can recruit enemies to serve as personas for them. I couldn't fit the whole explanation on the slide. But one core part of the gameplay in the Persona games is that you can recruit enemies to join you. And you can also fuse personas together, to create new ones. It's not like Pokemon where, you can train up your first capture and make it really strong. You will almost certainly fuse away your base persona pretty soon to make a more powerful one that can actually kill things. And you won't really get it back until much later. It's kind of linked in with the plot, particularly in Persona 5, but a lot of the time it's just stat crunching. There are guides online, there's lots of talk about, how to beat certain bosses with certain personas. Especially in Persona 5, the game does guide you to an extent. But from an in-universe perspective, it's a very special skill. The other party members do not have it as a rule. And in general, it tends to be very linked in with the main plot as to why the character has this particular gift. And to an extent, why they don't have to go through the same process that everybody else has to go through in order to get that persona. Except the Persona 5 guy. He's fine. Yeah. That's just there. Try not to look at that slide too hard. Anyway, this is the end of the first video. It's probably going to be the shortest one. Again, I'm going to put a link to the whole slideshow, all 4 parts, in the description so that you can browse that at your own pace if you find my voice annoying, or you think the things I'm saying out loud are inane, or you'd rather just read at your own pace rather than having to guess when I'm going to change the slide. Or I will also, once it's uploaded, put a link to the next video, which is going to be on Persona 3. Again, this is going to be a story-based presentation. I've pretty much mentioned all of the gameplay aspects that I'm going to mention, so please don't complain at me that you were looking for a gameplay guide, because that is not what I'm going to do. This was probably the most boring part, because it was sort of explaining the baseline knowledge that the rest of the presentations are going to be based around. So thank you for sticking with me, and I'll see you in a minute.